In the summer of 2007 on K2, Canadian Don Bowie summits without oxygen and wakes up the next morning at Camp 4 at 8,000 meters without his crampons. Someone stole them from his tent while the storm buried the camp in snow. Without crampons on K2's steep ice, descending is a death sentence. Bowie goes down anyway, slips, falls dozens of meters, breaks his leg, and for the next 2.5 days crawls down the mountain, past dozens of climbers who see him and don't stop. A Sherpa steps over him. An Italian takes his sleeping bag. This isn't a story about how a mountain kills people. This is a story about what people do to each other when there's too little air left for conscience, and about why a man who was abandoned on the slope came back to the Himalayas a year later and keeps coming back to this day. Newmarket, Ontario, a typical suburb north of Toronto, where kids grow up between hockey rinks and shopping malls. Don Bowie is born here on December 9th, 1969, and nothing about this place hints at who he'll become. But the boy is wired differently from an early age. Any elevation is an invitation. Any ascent he wants to do faster than necessary. While his peers watch hockey, he reads about people who go where the air runs out. His heroes aren't athletes from television, but mountaineers from books. Greg Child, John Roskilly, Wanda Rutkiewicz, people who climbed walls from which not everyone came back. Exactly when the pull turns into a plan is unknown. But at some point, Bowie ends up in Colorado, and this is where it truly begins. His first rock route is a crag called Sheep's Nose near Cheeseman Reservoir in the South Platte area. Granite slabs, cracks, balance technique. It's not the Himalayas, but this is where his hands first learned to hold his body on vertical terrain. From there, Rocky Mountain National Park, harder routes, longer walls. Colorado teaches Bowie the basic language of mountains, the one he'll speak for the rest of his life. Then California. A job at a tech startup, weekdays behind a screen, weekends in the Sierra Nevada, Yosemite granite, high-altitude ridges, glaciers. Mountains stop being a hobby and start competing with his paycheck. In 2003, the competition ends. Bowie quits, sells what he can sell, and moves to Bishop, a small town at the foot of the Eastern Sierra where people live for whom the wall matters more than the career ladder. He's 33, he has no sponsors, no big name, not a single serious high-altitude ascent, just a decision he's no longer going to reverse. Bishop will be his base for the next 20 years. From here he'll leave for the Karakoram and the Himalayas, and here he'll return with broken bones and stories that make ordinary people's mouths go dry. But all of that's ahead. For now, he's just a guy from an Ontario suburb who gave up a normal life for mountains he only knows from books. Books end where thin air begins. Around 1994, Bowie finds himself at real altitude for the first time, an expedition to the Chilean Andes, the details of which have barely survived in the record. But this is where he discovers something that can't be trained. His body handles altitude better than most. Where others start gasping and losing coordination, Bowie keeps moving. It's not courage, it's physiology. But without courage, physiology is useless. And without ambition, it's just an interesting medical fact. The next 10 years are about building experience. Expeditions to Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic, cold, isolation, walls of frozen granite, years of technical climbing in the Rockies. Bowie is in no rush to get to the Himalayas. He's building a foundation. But by the mid-2000s, the foundation is ready. And in 2005, he arrives in the Karakoram for the first time. The objective is Broad Peak, 8,047 meters, the West Ridge. Solo, no oxygen. For a first attempt on an 8,000er, it's a statement bordering on recklessness. Bowie climbs to 7,800 meters and turns around. 250 meters from the summit, but he heads down. That decision isn't weakness. It's the style that will define his entire career. The summit matters, but not more than coming back. In 2006, 2 attempts back-to-back. Cho Oyu in Tibet, 8,188 meters, the Polish Ridge variation, no oxygen, reached 8,000, no higher. And that same year, Annapurna 1, 8,091 meters, the East Ridge, and attempted a new route, stopped at 7,300. This is the first of many attempts on the mountain that will become his main obsession for the next 13 years. But he doesn't know that yet. By 2007, Bowie has built both a reputation and a principle. The reputation. A strong, high-altitude climber who climbs clean and isn't afraid to turn around. The principle. All 8,000ers only without supplemental oxygen, alpine style, no porters above base camp. Failure for him isn't defeat, but building material, not something to erase on the way to a triumphant ending. 3 8,000ers in 2 years, and not a single summit, but each attempt brings the next one closer, and the next one is K2. K2 isn't simply the second highest summit on the planet, it's a mountain that by 2007 had claimed the life of every fourth person who tried to climb it. Everest forgives mistakes. It has wide ridges, well-worn trails, oxygen bottles every 100 meters. K2 forgives nothing. Sheer walls, unpredictable avalanches. A section called the bottleneck, where tons of ice seracs hang over the only passage to the summit. Commercial groups don't come here. The people who come here understand they might not return. Chris Warner understands this better than most. K2 has already sent him home twice. In 2002 and 2005, he tried to climb and both times retreated. Now, in the summer of 2007, he's back for the third time. Warner isn't just a climber. He's the founder of the Earth Treks climbing gym chain in Annapolis, Maryland, an entrepreneur who knows how to organize people and resources. But on K2, he chooses minimalism over resources. The team is 3 people, 1 tent, no oxygen, no Sherpas or porters above base camp. Pure alpine style. You carry everything yourself and answer only for yourself. Second on the team is Bruce Normand, a British physicist working in Switzerland. Quiet, methodical, with a track record of the most demanding expeditions in the Karakoram. Third is Don Bowie. He doesn't have a single conquered 8,000er. 3 attempts, 3 turnarounds. On paper, he's the weakest of the 3. But Warner takes him not for his resume, but for what he's seen in their shared climbs. The ability to perform at altitude where others lose their minds, and to make decisions when the stakes are life itself. Warner brings cameras. The expedition shoots over 30 hours of HD footage. He doubles as leader and cameraman because the story of K2, if it happens, needs to be told. Around June 1st, 2007, the 3-man team arrives at the base camp at the foot of a mountain that over half a century has killed more climbers than any other 8,000er on Earth. Ahead of them, roughly 7 weeks. They don't yet know that of those 7 weeks, only 1 day will matter. The first plan is the boldest. K2's east face, unclimbed, nearly vertical, one of the last unsolved problems in high-altitude mountaineering. The trio climbs to 6,800 meters, and the route looks feasible. A logical line, good ice, the possibility of doing it with a small team using modern tactics. But avalanche danger shuts the door. Snow slabs rip off the face with a frequency that leaves no chance. Bowie will later write on the Mountaineering Forum's summit post that the route is promising and doable, a shame they couldn't continue. They retreat. The first loss isn't of lives, but of ambition. The team briefly considers the Seasen route, the south-southeast ridge, technically interesting, but ultimately switches to the Abruzzi, the classic route on which K2 was first summited in 1954. It's not a surrender, but pragmatism. On the Abruzzi, there's a better chance of using a short weather window, if one opens at all. It doesn't open. 5 summit attempts through June and July, and each time the mountain pushes them back down. Storms arrive one after another, burying the route in fresh snow, turning fixed ropes into icy cables, making avalanche risk unacceptable. Each failure costs days, burned calories, undermined morale, and resources that aren't infinite. On K2's south side that season, it's crowded. At least 10 expeditions from different countries. The Russian team Kuban, the Korean dynamic Busan with the ambitious Oh Yun-sun, Czech groups, the American Pfisterer expedition, Portuguese climber João Garcia, and the Italian K2, Freedom 2007, led by Daniele Nardi, which includes a young climber named Stefano Zavka, whose name means nothing to Bowie yet. In a few weeks, it will become part of a story impossible to forget. Base camp isn't a rest camp. It's a place where dozens of people from different countries sit in tents, stare at the same weather forecast, and wait, day after day, week after week. K2 stands before them, and with each passing day the mountain seems to grow. By mid-July, supplies are at their limit, patience too. And then the forecast finally changes. On July 16th, the team sets out for the final push. The weather is still awful. Wind, low clouds, snow squalls. But the forecast promises a brief window in a few days, and that's all they need to know. Moving between camps becomes a monotonous battle against altitude and wind. The hardest day is July 17th. The stretch from Camp 2 to Camp 3. Gusts so fierce the body spends energy not on climbing, but simply on not being blown off the slope. Above Camp 3, the snow is chest deep, and here comes a shift, not in weather, but in humanity. Teams from different expeditions that had existed side by side for weeks begin working together. Russians, Americans, Italians, Czechs take turns breaking trail and fixing communal ropes. At this altitude, competition loses all meaning. If they don't break the trail together, nobody gets through. Cooperation that in 2 days' time will be replaced by something very different. On July 19th, by evening, the shared summits team reaches Camp 4, the shoulder of K2, roughly 8,000 meters, the beginning of the zone where the human body destroys itself faster than it can recover. Tents are packed tight, Italians, Koreans, Portuguese, Czechs, pitched right next to each other. Every team's supplies are calculated for one attempt. If tomorrow doesn't work, there's nothing left to start over with. The summit push is set for midnight. 5 days of climbing have compressed into a single point, and in the next 20 hours, everything that will happen on this mountain will happen here. Around midnight on July 20th, headlamps begin moving upward from Camp 4. Dozens of glowing dots on a black slope, climbers from different expeditions setting out simultaneously, stretching into a chain. The temperature is well below -30. The wind is still bearable, but predicting how long it will stay that way is impossible. The window could slam shut at any moment. The first serious obstacle is the bottleneck, a steep ice couloir squeezed between rock walls and an overhanging ice sérac, the size of an apartment building. The sérac can collapse at any second, and there's no warning. The only strategy is to get through as fast as possible and hope today isn't the day. In the pre-dawn darkness, as climbers ascend through the couloir one by one, Nima Nurbu, a Sherpa with the Korean expedition, loses his footing. His boot slips off the ice, his body picks up speed. Climbers standing nearby try to grab him, but on steep ice, in the dark, in thick mittens, it's impossible. Nima Nurbu falls and dies. The column keeps moving upward. Morning brings sunlight in the most dangerous section, the traverse beneath the sérac. Here you have to cross the slope horizontally, moving directly under the overhanging mass of ice. Every minute spent on this traverse puts a climber in the kill zone. If the sérac collapses, nobody stands a chance. Bowie, Warner, and Normand cross it roped together, in silence, without stopping. The climb from Camp 4 to the summit takes more than 15 hours. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, Pakistan time, Warner and Normand take their final steps onto the summit of K2. Bowie reaches the top a few minutes later, 8,611 meters, without oxygen, the fourth Canadian in history to climb this mountain, the first 8,000er of his life, and he chose the hardest one of all. That day, around 17 climbers from 8 countries stand on the summit of K2. Russians, Italians, Americans, Czechs, Koreans, Portuguese. July 20th is the only window of the entire 2007 season on the mountain's south side. Those who didn't summit today won't summit at all. The sun is already tilting toward the horizon when the last climbers leave the top. The descent begins at dusk, and the weather deteriorates with every passing hour. Darkness at 8,000 meters isn't simply the absence of light. It's the loss of reference points, distances, the feel of the slope beneath your feet. A headlamp beam picks out 2 or 3 meters ahead, and everything else is blackness hiding crevasses, drop-offs, and ice. The shared summits team is descending toward Camp 4 when a faint voice rises out of that blackness. Libor Uher, a Czech climber who summited K2 via the Sesen route and was descending the Abruzzi, lies on the slope above camp. Exhausted, hypothermic, unable to move any farther. He's calling for help, but a voice at that altitude is a whisper. The wind erases in a second. Bowie's team has a choice. They're drained from a 15-hour ascent and have only just started descending in worsening weather. Every minute at altitude means brain cells that won't regenerate and calories that won't come back. Dragging a stranger into your tent means splitting already scarce resources, losing space and warmth. They drag him in. A 3-person tent, 4 people, 3 sleeping bags. Someone will freeze all night. It isn't discussed. At the same time, news arrives from the other side of the mountain that puts everything into a different scale. Stefano Zavka, an Italian climber from Daniele Nardi's team, hasn't returned from the summit. He's somewhere higher up, alone, in the dark, in falling temperatures. His teammates know this. But 6 hours pass before they tell anyone else. 6 hours in which the strongest climbers in camp could have organized a search. When Warner finds out about the delay and asks Nardi why they didn't look, Nardi answers with the sentence that will become the most quoted line of the expedition. Above 8,000, everyone is on their own. Zavka will never be found. Warner will later travel to Italy and spend 8 hours with his family. During the night, a storm engulfs the shoulder of K2. Wind drives snow horizontally, burying tents within hours. By morning, Camp 4 is a field of drifts with the outlines of fabric barely visible beneath. Visibility is near zero. Every team understands one thing: they need to get down, now. And in that panic, what begins will turn Don Bowie's triumph into an ordeal he never trained for. Bowie wakes in a tent stuffed with 4 bodies, and the first thing he does is reach into the vestibule for his gear. Crampons, the steel-toothed plates that attach to boots and let you grip ice, should be right where he left them the night before. They're gone. He tears through the vestibule, checks twice, 3 times. The crampons are gone, not the boots, the crampons specifically. This is important to understand. On an 8,000er without boots, you can't stand up, but without crampons, you can't stop. K. 2, below the summit, is steep ice. Bare boots on that ice are like leather dress shoes on a skating rink. Outside, chaos. Camp 4 is buried under storm snow. Other expeditions' tents barely visible. Climbers dig out gear, hurriedly stuff packs, shout to each other through the wind. Everyone wants down. The Portuguese and Russians leave first. The Italians try to follow their tracks and lose them within minutes. There's no orderly procedure. There's panic, frozen hands, and one question in every head: how fast can I get out of here? Who took Bowie's crampons has never been established. No one conducted an investigation. At 8,000 meters in a storm, there's nobody to figure out whose crampons are in whose vestibule, and no reason to try. Bowie later guessed that someone in the chaos couldn't find their own pair under the snow and grabbed the first ones they saw. Confusion, not malice. Warner put it more bluntly. One of the teams panicked, abandoned their own crampons buried under snow, and deliberately took someone else's from an accessible vestibule. 2 versions of the same event. One merciful, one accusatory. The truth is buried somewhere under the snow of Camp 4, along with a pair of steel plates that cost $200 in a store, and at 8,000 meters cost a life. The Shared Summits team has no spare pair. Alpine style is a philosophy of minimalism. You take exactly as much as you can carry, not a gram more. 3 people, 3 pairs of crampons, 3 sleeping bags, 1 tent. The system works perfectly until someone removes a single link. Now, the link is gone. Bowie stands at 8,000 meters, beneath his feet a sheet of ice, on his feet smooth boots, and around him a storm growing stronger by the hour. Yesterday, he was on top of the world. Today, he's in a trap. The choice is simple and impossible at the same time. Stay at Camp 4 and die slowly. Food and fuel are nearly gone. The storm isn't letting up. Every hour at 8,000 meters, the body destroys itself. Descend without crampons down the ice walls of K2 and most likely fall. Between a slow death and a probable fall, Bowie chooses the fall. At least with a fall, there's a variable. Maybe he'll get lucky. He starts descending. Technique is the only thing he has left. Years on the crags of Colorado, on Sierra glaciers, on Karakoram walls. Bowie moves with extreme care, kicking the welt of his boot into the ice, trying to stamp out some semblance of a step on a surface not designed for it. Every step is calculation and prayer at once. The boot holds as long as the slope is moderate. But K2, between Camp 4 and Camp 3, is not a moderate slope. It's steep ice at altitudes between 8,000 and 7,300 meters, where the angle of incline leaves no room for error. The error happens right there. The boot slips. On ice without crampons, there's nothing to catch on. No teeth, no edge, nothing. An ice axe is useless if the body has already picked up speed. Bowie hurtles down the slope, 50 meters, 70, 100. Sources differ on the estimate, but the order of magnitude is the same. A fall measured in dozens of meters. Below him, a cliff edge beyond which lie thousands of feet of empty air. If the rocks don't stop him before the edge, there's no chance of survival. The rocks stop him. Bowie's body slams into a rocky outcrop at the very edge of the drop. His foot jams between boulders at an unnatural angle, and momentum does the rest. A bone in his foot breaks. 3 ligaments tear. The pain doesn't come right away. At that altitude, adrenaline and hypoxia work like anesthesia. But when it arrives, it doesn't leave. Now the equation has changed for good. One person, a broken leg, no crampons, altitude roughly 7,500 meters, deteriorating weather. And between him and base camp, 1.5 vertical kilometers down one of the most technically demanding routes on the planet. Up above, in the camp he just left, other climbers are packing their gear and preparing to descend. Some of them will pass him in the coming hours. None will offer help. Bowie starts crawling. There's no other word for it. With a broken foot and torn ligaments, a normal step is impossible. Every movement means shifting weight onto the good leg, bracing on the ice axe, dragging the broken foot behind. 1 meter, another meter, another meter. A slope that a healthy climber with crampons covers in hours stretches into days. Physical pain is understandable, measurable, something you can adapt to. What happens around him is not. On the Abruzzi route during those days, there are dozens of people, some descending from the summit, others moving between camps. Bowie isn't invisible. They see him. Climbers walk past who can assess the situation at a glance. A man without crampons, with an injured leg, moving at a speed that won't get him to a safe altitude before dark. Not one stops. A Sherpa literally steps over him, like a rock on the trail, and continues upward. At an altitude where the brain receives half its normal oxygen, empathy is one of the first functions to shut down. But knowing that doesn't make the moment any less terrifying. 2 days later, Bowie reaches Camp 2. He's counting on his tent, on shelter, warmth, at least a few hours of real rest before continuing down. The tent is there. Inside are 4 people, 3 Italian climbers and 1 Iranian. They've occupied someone else's shelter while its owner was crawling down the slope with a fracture. One of the Italians is sleeping in Bowie's sleeping bag. When Bowie demands it back, the answer sounds like it was rehearsed for a movie. Yes, yesterday it was your sleeping bag, and tomorrow it will be your sleeping bag. But today, it's my sleeping bag. Bowie spends the night at an altitude of several thousand meters without a sleeping bag. Later, when the news portal Explorer Web publishes a report portraying the Italian climbers as people who helped Bowie descend, he responds personally. His words leave no room for interpretation. I received no help from the Italians in my descent, none whatsoever. We simply happened to be on the route at the same time. It's not bitterness, it's the precision of a man who knows the value of every fact, because on a mountain, facts are all that separates truth from myth. Somewhere between Camp 1 and Advanced Base Camp, at an altitude where the slope finally becomes less steep and the air slightly more fit for thought, Bowie hears footsteps behind him. It's Chris Warner, and next to him is Leiber Uher, the same Czech climber that 3 Americans and a Canadian had dragged into a tent on the shoulder 2 nights earlier when he lay hypothermic and called for help in a voice the wind nearly erased. Uher survived, and now he's here, descending not toward his own camp, but toward the man who saved his life. A debt repaid on the same mountain where it was taken. The 3 of them move slower than they'd like, but faster than Bowie was going alone. Warner and Uher support him on difficult sections, take some of his weight where the slope won't allow hobbling on his own. It's not an evacuation, it's 3 exhausted people helping each other survive. From Advanced Base Camp, Czech climbers come out to meet them. They carry hot drinks and extra hands. The next day, a group Bowie didn't expect arrives from below. Around 40 volunteers from base camp, carrying stretchers, ropes, food. Among them is Fabrizio Zangrilli, an American climber of Italian descent, and 2 people who have just arrived at the foot of K2 after their own expedition on neighboring Broad Peak. Gerlinde Kaltenbrunner, and Ralph Duimowitz, two of the strongest high-altitude climbers on the planet. They didn't rest, didn't weigh the risks, didn't calculate pros and cons. They heard there was a person with a broken leg up high and ran upward with the porters. 4 days later, a helicopter. Bowie leaves K2 on a stretcher, not on his own feet. Behind him, a summit and a descent that showed him both sides of human nature at arm's length. Chris Warner will later articulate that duality more precisely than anyone. Around 17 climbers from 8 countries, standing side by side on the summit, proved capable of both incredible courage and astonishing indifference, sometimes within the same hour. Bowie, who was abandoned, robbed, and stepped over, gives a softer answer. At that altitude, it's very hard to think clearly enough to go out of your way and help someone else in trouble. 2 conclusions from one expedition. One accusatory, one forgiving, both honest. But only one of them can bring a person back to the mountains. The leg heals. While Bowie recovers in Bishop, the K2 story takes on a life of its own. NBC produces an hour-long special. Nominated for an Emmy, Warner launches a speaking career at Google and the Wharton School of Business. And in 2009, publishes the book High Altitude Leadership. The expedition becomes a parable about leadership for corporate conferences. Bowie by then is already on the next mountain. Less than a year after being evacuated from K2, he's back on Annapurna. A second attempt, and the team is stronger than anything he's been part of before. Inaki Ochoa de Olza, a legendary Basque climber, one of the strongest high-altitude mountaineers in the world, striving to complete the program of all 14 8,000ers. Alongside him, Romanian Horia Kolobasanu and Russian Alexei Bolotov. Near the summit, Ochoa loses strength, rapidly, irreversibly. At altitude, this can mean cerebral edema, pulmonary edema, or both. A rescue operation begins, joined by Wally Steck and Denis Urubko, among the strongest high-altitude climbers on the planet. They climb up to Ochoa, try to stabilize him, begin the descent. Ochoa dies despite everything that was done. The mountain that 11 years later will finally let Bowie stand on its summit takes a man beside him in 2008. The mountaineering community notes not the failure, but the courage. Bowie receives the Spirit of Mountaineering commendation at the Piolet d'Or ceremony, the most prestigious award in climbing. The government of Navarre, the region Ochoa came from, presents him with the gold medal for merit in sport. K2 didn't stop Bowie, but the mountains keep taking those who walk beside him, and that tally is only just beginning. 3 years after K2, Bowie methodically builds his high-altitude record, and in 2010 gets the result he's been waiting 5 years for. Gasherbrum 1, 8,068 meters, the Japanese couloir, a narrow ice gully on the northwest face demanding flawless technique and precise timing. Bowie climbs from the second camp in a single push, without oxygen, roped with Alexei Bolotov and Czech climbers. Summit, his second 8,000er. The first one he didn't just reach, but climbed with a sense of control. In 2011, a person enters his life alongside whom control takes on an entirely different speed. Wally Steck, a Swiss climber the world press calls the Swiss machine. Steck doesn't walk in the mountains, he runs. His style is extreme minimalism, extreme speed, solo ascents that others consider impossible. Together, they launch the Himalaya Speed Project, a series of speed ascents on 8,000ers. First target, Cho Oyu, 8,188 meters. Bowie and Steck climb from advanced base camp to the summit in roughly 20 hours. For a standard expedition, that's a week-long route. Bowie climbs with a stomach illness that at sea level would put him in bed, but at 8,000 meters becomes an extra layer of suffering on top of hypoxia and cold. He makes it. His third 8,000er. Next objective, Everest, the north side, from Tibet. Without oxygen, without Sherpas, in a style that makes the standard commercial route unrecognizable. Bowie turns back at 8,000 meters. The cold becomes unbearable. Steck pushes higher to 8,700, but also retreats. Everest remains unconquered for both. In 2013, the partnership brings them back to Annapurna, the mountain that has haunted Bowie since 2006. The South Face, one of the most dangerous routes in the Himalayas. Bowie provides support at advanced base camp. Steck goes up alone and on October 8th through 9th completes a solo ascent that will become one of the most discussed and controversial achievements of the decade. Bowie is the key witness, the person who saw the beginning and end of that climb from ABC. For Annapurna, this is Bowie's fourth attempt, and his fourth retreat. The summit still isn't his. By 2019, Bowie's list of losses reads like an obituary for an entire generation of Himalayan climbers. Alexei Boletov, his partner on Gasherbrum 1 and Annapurna, dies on the Lhotse face in 2013. Whaley Steck, the man with whom Bowie shared tents, summit pushes, and a philosophy of speed, is killed on Nuptse in 2017 while preparing for yet another impossible project. Inaki Ochoa, the one for whom Bowie climbed into the death zone on Annapurna in 2008, has been dead for 11 years by then. Over those years, Bowie loses several climbing partners. The mountains he loves methodically take the people he climbs them with. Over those 13 years, Annapurna transforms from a goal into an obsession, from an obsession into a conversation that can't be ended without getting an answer. 6 expeditions, 2006, 2008, 2012, 2013, and 2 more whose details are lost in the chronology. Every time, a new route, a new team, a new hope. Every time, a retreat. In 2008, Ochoa's death. In 2012, a solo attempt on the German Ridge, turnaround. In 2013, the 4th attempt, Steck goes to the summit alone, Bowie stays below. Annapurna takes his friends, rejects him personally, but cannot make him stop coming back. On April 23, 2019, Bowie sets out on the Dutch Rib, transitioning into the French Direct, a technically demanding line on Annapurna's north face. Self-supported, without oxygen, without porters. Beside him is Michael Baronian, a French high-altitude climber. Somewhere on the mountain during the same days, Nirmal Purja is working on his 14 Peaks project. But Bowie goes his own route, in his own style, by his own rules, the same ones he formulated back in Bishop 16 years earlier. He reaches the summit, 8,091 meters, the first Canadian to climb Annapurna without supplemental oxygen, his 4th 8,000er, 13 years between the first attempt and the moment the mountain finally says yes. His philosophy, failure as building material, not as defeat, stops being a beautiful phrase and becomes a fact confirmed by altitude. Annapurna hasn't cooled in memory before Bowie is already in the Karakoram. Same season, summer of 2019. The objective is Gasherbrum 2, 8,034 meters, without oxygen. Alongside him are Alex Gavon, Laura Hintze, and Denis Urubko. Everything points to Bowie closing out his 5th 8,000er in the same year he finally took Annapurna. On neighboring Gasherbrum 7, Italian climber Francesco Casardo falls during descent and sustains severe injuries at an altitude of roughly 6,400 meters. A helicopter can't fly that high. A ground rescue requires people capable of operating in that zone, and within dozens of kilometers, there are only a handful. Bowie abandons his own expedition, doesn't postpone it, doesn't promise to come back, abandons it. Together with Urubko, he climbs up to Casardo and spends hours lowering the injured man down the slope. Casardo is evacuated. His partner Kala Cementi will call the rescuers angels. Gasherbrum 2 is finished for Bowie. In the winter of 2019 through 2020, a winter attempt on Broad Peak with Urubko and Hintze. 75 days at temperatures dropping to -50. The team reaches 6,600 meters. Bowie develops bronchial pneumonia. At that altitude and in that cold, it's a diagnosis that within hours can progress to pulmonary edema. He's evacuated by helicopter. After the expedition, Urubko gives an interview in which he calls Bowie dead weight. The word from a man who has summited all 14 8,000ers carries more weight than from anyone else. The man who was left to crawl alone on K2 never walks past someone else in trouble, even when it costs him the summit, even when it earns him the label of dead weight. Who took the crampons from the vestibule at Camp 4 on the morning of July the 21st, 2007, remains unanswered. Nearly 20 years later, no name has surfaced, no confession has been made. The camp was long ago buried by fresh storms, and a pair of steel plates rests somewhere under meters of snow alongside the truth about that morning. Bowie stopped looking for someone to blame a long time ago. Warner hasn't. But both understand one thing. At that altitude, the question, who's to blame, matters less than the question, what will you do next? Stefano Zavka was never found. Somewhere on the upper slopes of K2 lies the body of an Italian climber whose own team didn't search for him for 6 hours. Nardi continued his career and was killed on Nanga Parbat in 2019, another mountain that doesn't give back its dead. Whether Zavka could have been saved that night is a question no one tried to answer with action. In 2024, Bowie releases the film he spent 13 years making, Annapurna, Dreams and Nightmares. 2.5 hours, 6 expeditions, the entire arc from first attempt to summit. On screen are Stek, who is gone, Ochoa, who is gone, Urubko, who called him dead weight. When audiences at screenings ask Bowie about K2, he tells the story without anger and without accusations, with the precision of a man who long ago learned to separate facts from interpretations. 20 years in the big mountains never gave him an answer to who took his crampons, but they gave him an answer to a more important question. What kind of person do you remain when there's not enough oxygen for either your muscles or your conscience?